I just found a really interesting weapon here. So I really like this type of sword here. It's got huge splash damage radius, and for such a large radius, it actually does a lot of damage compared to other weapons of similar levels. It's got increased critical strike chance. All of them do, these anti-gravity swords. It's got massive critical damage, and they also all come with large amounts of stun attack strength. Well, I've been wanting to find, like, a mythic or, legendary or even unique sword of this type, but I haven't found one yet. But now I found this one, and it's not amazing, but it's pretty good. The best part is, okay, so it has some spectral damage, not a lot, but it also comes with 182 phase attack strength. So now, with a 4-meter radius, you've got splash damage, above average splash damage, um, which is almost competitive with like single target damage of some other types of swords. Not quite, but it's a good amount of splash damage. You combine that with stun attack strength, and now it actually has a pretty decent amount of phase attack strength as well. Now, is it going to be enough to reliably phase like bosses and shit like that? Probably not. Not without some help. But it's enough that you're going to be doing a pretty healthy amount of phasing. So, this is pretty cool. Now, what else does it have? Okay, Prayer of Healing. I believe that is this right here. So that's actually really good because it's a massive reduction in cooldown. Problem is, it costs a lot of this willpower or whatever. So until I get more regen here, that's not gonna it's gonna be bottlenecked. +3 to Sword of Reckoning, that is really good as well. You know, especially considering that's basically another sort of like mana sink. So you want to make that Sword of Reckoning do as much damage as possible. So and combine that Sword of Reckoning. I believe that Sword of Reckoning will apply that splash damage. So that's really good. 1% chance to unleash rebounder bolts and attacking. If it was more like 10+%, that would be nice. But yeah, that's whatever. That's whatever. But either way, this is a really nice sword. I'm definitely fucking with it for sure. So there we go. So just to be fair, when it comes to this weapon is far from ideal actually. So even though it's way better of an anti-gravity sword, which is in my opinion one of the best weapon systems you could use as a melee guy in this game, as good as it is, it still has massive deficiencies compared to what potential you could have. For instance, you don't have any mod slots at all, and I think I've seen as much as 2 mod slots in these type of swords. Maybe if you're lucky, you can even get 3, maybe. So lack of mod slots is a major deficiency. So, you know, compared to, say, for example, this sword right here, which I can't even use right now because it's just too much willpower. I don't have enough. It's not going to bring as much damage. It's just not. Um, you know, especially sheet damage. Compared to something like this, which is a sort of competing splash damage weapon system. Again, you don't get. This has 3 mod slots. This has none. Um, Now, don't be fooled. This is a level 32 weapon, and it's bringing 30 to 43 damage out of the box um, with only a 1.5-meter radius. This one is only level 23, and it's doing 36 to 47 at a 4-meter radius. So this is literally doing, um, like, I would say at least a few percent more damage at 9 levels lower. So when you upgrade this, it's going to do more damage. So this brings a lot more base damage than this thing, but with the right modifications, with the right trinkets or whatever you call these things, Uh, you can add massive, massive amounts of damage, but they're multipliers, so they're being applied to a much lower base damage. So ideally, this weapon right here would have like at least one or two mod slots. I don't know if it's possible for anti-gravity swords to have more mod slots. And what I've noticed is usually the better the weapon system is right out of the box for like any type of weapon, um, generally speaking, the less mod slots it's gonna be able to come with. So this is probably one of the attempts to sort of balance things in this game. Even though, in my opinion, weapon systems are massively imbalanced, and that's not a bad thing. I like it when I find a type of weapon that is clearly better than other weapons, at least along certain vectors. So that's one thing this doesn't have going for it. No mod slots. So that's bad. The other thing is that the most powerful potential that especially a mythic, purple type of item can have, and to some extent also double-edged items, is that they can sometimes come with like literally 4 to 6 increased damage rolls. So let me give an example here. So with this thing, you see it adds 11% spectral damage. Well, these could literally have like adds 20% spectral, 20% fire, 20% toxic, etc. It could have like 4 or 5 of those. And it could even have another roll that just adds total damage. So adds like 20% damage. And these rolls can actually go as high, I believe, as 50%. Not for the elemental damage, but for the, a total damage multiplier. So you could have like 20% spectral, a complete rainbow weapon with all the elements, like 4 or 5 elements of damage, plus 50% total damage. Now, you have to get really lucky to find something that good. And there's still room for like one more property to be added as well. So that the best thing that this weapon could possibly be would be to have like 2 mod slots and full damage rolls. Because sure, Prayer of Healing is nice, and Sword of Reckoning is nice, and this other stuff, and Phase Attack is actually pretty good. But personally, I would rather have the damage rolls because that's going to do way more for you than this fucking bullshit right here. Um, that being said, though, I really do love certain elemental attack strengths. Like Phase is great. You know, it's great both defensively and offensively. Ignite is amazing as well. Like for bringing down really beefy targets, that's really reliable. Uh, and even electrocution and uh, you know toxic, forgot what it's called, like disease or something like that. That is also good for bringing things down faster. Um, it's a little bit more complicated, I think, especially with electrocution. Some electrocution effects are much stronger than others in terms of damage, but depending on which weapon or which spell is being used, electrocution can be an exceedingly potent way to bring down really big targets. Maybe not so much with this class, but when it comes to evokers and to some extent maybe marksmen and stuff, I don't know too much about this game yet. I don't know anything about Blade Masters. So electrocution is also a nice way to help bring down really tough targets like bosses and stuff like that. So it's both good news and bad news for this weapon. This is still a very good weapon overall, especially if you're like trying to find that middle ground between, you know, lots of AoE damage to bring down, large amounts of enemies, and the other extreme, which is just large amounts of single target damage to bring down harder targets. This sort of bridges the gap and gives you a really healthy balance between those two things. So it makes it a type of weapon that you know it this is kind of like the assault rifle of swords. It bridges the gap between submachine guns and battle rifles, and this is like the assault rifle of swords basically, and it's a pretty good one. Now with the right rolls, if you get lucky enough, this thing could become so good that it becomes not even worth using like the single target oriented swords. Now, right now, uh, as far as I can see, probably the best single target weapon system that I like is the Righteous Star, because it comes with, huge amounts of critical strike chance, huge amount of phase attack strength, huge amounts of mod slots, and it brings a pretty good amount of damage. It's not the top damage, but it's combined with those other things, it's pretty good, because when you're phasing, you're doing a lot more damage. Um, and this one actually is not as good. This unique is not as good as this, because you have way more potential with these mod slots. Uh, Now, my other favorite weapon system so far is the Jacob's Lasher sword. So it brings a large amount of both direct and splash damage. The radius is decent, and they tend to come with a pretty good amount of shock attack strength. Let me just verify that. Let's see here. Right. Yeah, so they come right out of the box. This thing is level 25 and it's already doing 348. Wait, did these add any shock attack? Okay, so it's 300. I added 58 from this battery here. So Jacob's Lashers are good because they bring like an above average amount of damage uh, for, both of these categories combined, and lots of shock attack strength. Um, and now the only downside is I don't think the shock does a huge amount of damage. Um, the power, maybe if this power was like 50% or higher, it would be better. But it's still pretty decent, and these things tend to be able to come with like, 3 mod slots, maybe even 4. I don't know, but I think 3 is the maximum. So if you get a good enough, so this is actually, not gonna lie, this weapon is probably better overall than, the anti-gravity sword. But if the anti-gravity sword is good enough, I still think it kind of wins overall, just because with that 4 meter radius, you could be bringing down very large groups of like relatively, beefier enemies. So overall, these are both really good. And this is an amazing weapon. Like, just to give you an idea of how good this weapon is, like, this is this is literally like not even, this is the lowest grade of weapon you can get besides common. Like, this is a common weapon. It has no special attributes. And then the green ones enhanced, they might come with like one attribute, right? They come with one attribute. The only reason you see 2 attributes here is because one of them is inherent in all these weapons, so it's a default attribute. The critical strike chance is not. Then if you get a rare weapon, which is a blue one with the 2 stars, you get 2 attributes. So we're not even talking about items that can come with 3, 4, 5, 6 attributes. We're only talking about 2 or 1 in this case. So this would seem like a really shitty weapon, but it's such a good weapon system that, combined with the mod slots, I like it better than any unique weapon I've found so far. Literally, like, all the unique swords in this game that I've seen so far are pretty shitty. They've been massively disappointing as a Templar, but the shields are really good. But I'm going to keep this on the weapons right now. There isn't really much more to say about that. So this sanctified anti-gravity sword, it's great compared to the anti-gravity swords I've seen so far, but it has way more potential.